Half a world away, the voices of the Egyptian people have transformed tragedy and despair into a global movement for freedom and democracy. In June of 2010, after a young Egyptian businessman was brutally beaten and killed by the police, Wael Ghonim created a Facebook page to protest the killing. His page became a gathering place where Egyptians could protest the human rights violations and other government abuses that were all too common in Egypt. Wael's single act provided the spark for countless others, and a movement began to build. 6 months later, the world watched as the people of Tunisia summoned their courage and rose up to demand a better future. Wael Ghonim was one of those watching. He was inspired by the Tunisians who risked their lives to stand up for change, and used his Facebook page to ask fellow Egyptians to do the same thing. He had no idea how many would heed the call. On January 25th, after decades of silence, people in Tahrir Square and all over Egypt joined in protest, and for the next 2 weeks they made themselves heard in every corner of the globe. Many Egyptians paid a heavy price for speaking up, the ultimate price. Hundreds were killed and thousands were injured by security forces loyal to the dictatorship. The government tried to settle the uprising by imprisoning and torturing democracy activists who were using social media to encourage civil disobedience. Wael was one of those captured by the Egyptian police. But his voice and the voice of his countrymen and women would not be silenced. After 12 days in captivity, Wael was released. He immediately returned to Tahrir Square, and his courageous return gave the movement new strength. As we all know now, within just a few days, the people of Egypt were charting a new future for themselves and their country. Their courage has inspired thousands of others, near and far, to make their own stand for justice and a democratic future. Now I would like to ask Wael Ghonim to accept the Profile and Courage Award in the name of his countrymen and women who stood for change. Will you please come forward?
Before I start and actually deliver my speech, I'd like to thank Caroline Kennedy. I was really touched when she emailed me, not called me this time, to tell me that she selected me as a representative for the Egyptian people to receive the award. And I was really deeply touched when I met her with my colleague Maha, because I found that she is an extremely humble person. She's a great model of a human being we want to see in this world. I was really honored to meet her and to receive this award, and I appreciate everyone who selected the Egyptian people and thought that we have done something good for humanity. Please join me in welcoming. I see some Egyptian faces here, and so everyone who's Egyptian, please stand up. Maha, you are Egyptian. Today is just for me is one thing to realize is that we have much more in common than our differences, and we need to go back to the human value, the human values that are deeply inside each one of us, to unite and to actually believe that there are lots of good people in this earth. After the revolution, I met a lot of interesting people in this world, and I was joking with my colleague Maha, who have done an amazing job helping me out. And I told her, you know, I've seen a lot of great people. Where are all these bad people doing all the problems in the world? So I was asked to prepare for this, and I just decided to prepare using my iPad and to try and give it a digital edge. So let me start by a quote. The best road to progress is freedom's road. These are the words of President Kennedy. And this is the road that the Egyptians were walking on for the first time in decades. Today, I'm very happy to be here at the JFK Library as one of millions of Egyptians who had courage to fight in order to have the chance to walk along freedom's road. It's humbling for me, but also fills me with pride that the courage of my fellow Egyptians is being recognized globally. We were living under a regime that systematically oppressed its people to ensure its existence, a regime that heavily relied on security to ensure stability rather than democracy to ensure progress, a regime that made over 40% of the Egyptians live below the poverty lines, and over 35% of Egyptians are still illiterate in the 21st century, a regime that helped 0.5% of the people to control over 80% of the wealth of the country, a regime where corruption, torture, bribery, among many other bad things, were both systematic and sanctioned. Egyptians on the 25th of January started a journey to find the real Egypt, the one we were told it was gone, the one they only read about in history books. Brave and mainly young Egyptians went to the street on 25th of January in the largest campaign to find their own freedom and dignity. Few days later, millions of people joined the call, and they all agreed on one thing. The people want to bring down the regime that was oppressing us. Egyptians found their country after 18 days of searching. As I saw this, I thought and I said, "Welcome back, Egypt." Egyptians showed their courage and bravery. In fact, over 800 people sacrificed their lives for others to continue their struggle towards real democracy and freedom. More than 6,000 Egyptians were injured, and about a couple of thousands of them lost one or two of their eyes during the protests. I know a couple of the people, and I remember one guy who lost his both eyes. He can't see anymore. He said he never regrets it because it was for a better Egypt. The younger generation in the Arab world sent a strong message to every dictator. You are no longer going to enjoy your absolute power. Your plans to oppress your people will eventually come to an end. And you can't keep a dictatorship alive in the highly connected 21st century. They also sent a strong wake-up call to other countries and nations in the international community who had been favoring the short-term interests of their governments and corporations over the long-term interests of their over the long-term values of their very own people. It is important to realize that the struggle for freedom in Egypt isn't over yet. It's just the beginning. For what was built over tons of years cannot vanish in few weeks or months. As the Egyptian scholar, the Muslim scholar Sheikh Muhammad Mitwali Sha'rawi once said, "The true revolutionary is the one who fights to end the corrupted regime and then calms down to start building glory." We were living in a nightmare, and as we're getting out of it, it is important to be optimistic and start dreaming of a better Egypt. I end my remarks with what Churchill once said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." Thanks, everyone.